So at this time, I want to welcome our presenters. Our first presenter, or one of our co-presenters, is Mr. Douglas Mudd, or Doug Mudd. He's the Adult Ed Director from Community Action. He manages 9 counties surrounding Travis County. He has worked in adult education since 2004 as an instructor, coordinator, and now director. He's been the director for almost 5 years, and his office is located in San Marcos. So welcome, Doug. We also have Mr. Luis Martinez. And Mr. Luis Martinez, from July 2016 to present, he has been the director of Isleta Community Learning Center in the Isleta Independent School District in El Paso, Texas. He has K through 12 superintendent experience in Maryland and New Mexico. And he has served as the National Education Director of the Josephson Institute of Ethics, the Character Counts organization. And he has also worked as a teacher, coach, program director, administrator, and national public speaker from Puerto Rico to Canada and from Hawaii to Rhode Island. So welcome, Mr. Martinez. And at this time, I will go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. Take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Olga. And thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you all are doing well. Happy Monday. So, you are all here, obviously, because you want to develop a Spanish GED program, or perhaps you want to, improve your program or develop a program, or just want to know what other programs are doing in terms of Spanish GED programming. So, let me tell you a little bit about Community Action. So, as Olga mentioned, we cover the 9 counties surrounding Travis County, but we also we serve about 2,000 students a year. I just kind of want to give everybody an idea of what we do and what we provide, and what size of program we have. So if you're trying to match, programs, you can kind of see generally where we are. We are a nonprofit. We're one of 2 nonprofits that provide services in the area and in Texas, and we're we serve in libraries, school districts, apartment complexes, housing authorities, workforce solutions offices, and literacy organizations, and with community colleges. So that's kind of the idea of where we serve. And I think Mr. Martinez has a similar number of students. Mr. Martinez, you want to mention something about your program?
I do, and thank you, Doug, and good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to see there's so many people here. It's wonderful that people are grasping the idea that Spanish GED is just as, if not more valuable than English GED. We work with the Far West Adult Education Consortium, which is the conglomerate of 3 ISDs. We belong with the Socorro ISD, the El Paso ISD, and Isleta ISD. And together we work as independent organizations with a collaborative effort in all of the metric areas. The Far West serves the counties of Presidio, Hudspeth, Jeff Davis, Culberson, and El Paso counties. And normally under non-pandemic or pre-pandemic conditions, we had about 3,000 to 3,200 students. We have this year about half that. Pandemic has created a real dearth of participation based on both the demographic of our area and the people who are fearful of being out in public. We are at this point contemplating July going back live and looking at social distancing within the organization. But in terms of what we do, our school districts compare to one another in size and in population. We are on the border very much closely to Ciudad Juarez, and we have a lot of people who come back and forth. And Spanish GED is one of the greatest boons to our population. And I want to talk as we go about the ESL component of Spanish GED as well. But Doug, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so do you see the objectives on the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure we're on the same page here. Okay, so these are sort of our objectives and what we're going to be talking about. I mean, the first part of our programming or our presentation, we're going to be covering a lot of the the AEL letter 0117 regulations as it relates to Spanish GED programming, including the expanded opportunities for ELLs. And so bear with us in this. We have to have the guidance first, and that way we're not, leading anybody astray on anything, and we're wanting to make sure everyone understands, what's allowed and what's not allowed, right? So we're going to talk about the letter first, and then we're going to explore both our perspectives, Mr. Martinez and myself, in our programs for the Spanish HSE program in our individual areas. Then we're going to later discuss the benefits and challenges of providing the Spanish GED program, examine our various models. We have similar models, actually, is what we've come to find out, and similar curriculum, but we'll discuss both of those as we go. So we're going to just jump right into the letter, implementing programs and activities for services for English language learners. First of all, I want to say for all these letters, I know that, all program administrators and directors, you get these letters, and what I like to do right off the bat when I get a letter, and this is not a new letter, by the way, this is an older letter, but just in general, when reading these letters and trying to build a program, I first want to figure out, what it is to be in compliance, right? That's the stage one. Get the bare minimum, right? What do you need to be in compliance? And then what documentation, what evidence you need, and then build out from there. So I don't know if that's your strategy also, but that's community action strategy, because that way you at least are safe, and then build out and get creative and blow it up, your program up as you like. So, but anyway, this letter, of course, is talking about a lot of different regulations and expanding and opportunities for English language learners, but in GED, Spanish GED, ESL programming is just one part of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So the purpose of the letter, obviously, is to provide adult education and literacy and grantees with information and guidance, capacity building support related to implementing programs, activities, and services for English language learners, but also, as I mentioned, it's instruction in Spanish GED. So the procedure number 2, local flexibility, no local flexibility. So this is part of the letter and there's several of these, no local flexibility, NLF. So this is the, what you have to do, right? So AEL grantees must ensure that ESL services lead to attainment of a secondary school diploma or Texas high school equivalency and transition to post-secondary education and training, right? So, and to meet this requirement, a program of instruction must have implemented the content standards. I know a lot of the programs have done this, but and evidenced by the use of curricula, lesson plans, or instructional materials. The way we do this in community action is we put the content standard objectives in the syllabus, and so if a monitor comes by, they can see that that's clearly laid out there. We also have content standard aligned curriculum that we chose. We also, so number 2, we offer program of instruction must offer educational and career counseling services that assist an eligible individual to transition to post-secondary education or employment. And the way what community action does there, and I'm talking about our program just to kind of give you an idea as an example, but we provide for assisting an eligible individual to transition to post-secondary education, we offer, we do career counseling services, our IET program. We also, but we can't possibly use those services for all the ELL, for those, using those 4 career counselors, but instead what we do is we have our teachers and coordinators work with students individually in class, but also at registration, at orientation. We provide that service. And the last one is to be part of a career pathway, including not limited to integrated EL civics, integrated education and training. So we obviously, invite all our ELL students, or we at least inform them about our EL Civics program, IET program, or other IET program. So keep in mind, I highlighted lead to because not that all the programs don't have to be directly related to a secondary school diploma, but they have to lead to it. So there's a lot of transitioning curriculum you can add into your program to be compliant in that area.
If I may, in the far west, we have been fortunate enough to have a career navigator. We have Ms. Wendy Ariano and Ms. Norma Montes and Maria Naya in our 3 programs, and they work hand in hand with the instructors and with the IET trainers to make sure that each of these Spanish HSE students has in mind a career goal that leads to either a career pathway or to post-secondary. It's not just enough anymore to say, I want to get my GED because I never had it. There really is a distinct pathway that our career navigators lead these students through, keep them on the milestones and support them through the process of getting to that career pathway and or transition to post-secondary. Doug, thanks for letting me say that.
Please chime in. Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, so also this is procedure 3, no local flexibility, and this seems obvious. I'm not going to take too much time on this, but all AEL grantees must ensure that ESL services provide course and curricula options to support ELLs to achieve competence in reading, writing, speaking, and comprehending English. And then we have, this is considered local flexibility. They can also do math with ELL students. And of course, in our Spanish GED classes, we provide these services to the students. Okay, I'm going to continue on. So here's the expanded program options as we continue. There's no local flexibility. So AEO grantees must ensure that ESL instructional programs and services provide an interconnected sequence across ESL levels, and that it leads to attainment of a secondary diploma or transition into post-secondary education or training. These outcomes must be reflected in program objectives, curriculum, and services. And what we do, obviously, to find these Spanish GED teachers, it's not easy. You have to have someone that speaks Spanish fluently, also knows the 4 subjects in GED. And so what we do is we actually have them teach a lesson in the interviewing process. They have to speak fluent Spanish. We also have an interviewer, that speaks fluent Spanish, at least one in that whenever we're interviewing the student, the employee or future employee candidate. Okay, and I'm just going to continue with that.
Doug, if I may?
Yes, please.
The other option that we have, and I want to just put a shout out to Ann Savino and the Skilled Immigrant Integration Project that we engaged in starting in 2019, that gave us incredible opportunity to take some of our degreed professionals here within the program and interview them on site, as it were, to see if they, who already have a degree, can teach these classes here. So we have former students who have degrees, in this case from Mexico, who are teaching these Spanish ESL GED classes and teaching English HSE classes in other instances as well. It is a wonderful recruiting ground for your professionals who are trying to get a better job and who can move directly into AEL services. So thanks, Doug.
Sure. Okay, we're gonna move on to, this is local flexibility. And so here, AU grantees may offer these services, and keep in mind that AEL grantees are required to offer educational and career counseling services, but these are the options. And of course, we go to those options. Services delivered by AEL Career Pathways Navigators that include workforce case management in conjunction with college and career advising. Of course, we provide these career pathway navigators. Like I said, we have 4 of them in our area. We also, the other optional local flexibility career educational counseling services is concurrent or co-enrollment in programs or activities provided through the Workforce Solutions offices. I don't know if you all provide these services in your workforce or in connection with your local Workforce Solutions offices. Our ESL students typically with community action. We have a few that we do co-enrollment, but typically we have some, but our ABE students have these services as well. So we have kind of a combination, but less with ESL students with these. The other thing is that comprehensive and specialized assessments of skill levels and service needs, including the provision of credential evaluation, authentication and verification services. It's another optional service that you can provide. And I know, Mr. Martinez, you do provide these credential validations in your ESL professionals class. Do you want to speak to that at all?
We have, in fact, made the plan with the Career Navigator that if they have a specific goal, it's just not a random, let's evaluate everybody's transcript. They're trying to look at what will this transcript do for your next step. That transcript evaluation provides us the opportunity to give each of those students a question about whether or not they need to get a GED or whether or not their foreign degree will hold them instead if, in fact, we can say there are the same credentials in English as they are in Spanish. So we've had a great time with that. Internally in the ISD, we've been able to do high school transcript evaluations based on the number of employees in the ISD that we have who have that across the border credential validation service.
Okay.
And for your last note, the workforce preparation activities, we do that within the ESL portion rather than in the HSE classes, but that's exactly what Community Action does as well.
Yeah, that's one thing we've discussed is how we have never talked about this, but we have developed similar programs. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but workforce preparation activities, of course, it's interviewing, it's, professionalism in the workplace, it's many things. And we do provide those as the ESL portion of our classes. Here's procedure 8, no local flexibility on this one. Educational and career counseling services. And this is what we've mentioned before. AO grantees must consider the provision of credential evaluation, authentication, and verification services on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, we don't want to give it to everyone. It's ones that are in need of it. And I don't know, that we also do our ESL for professionals. Mainly, we offer that to our ones who have college degrees in that particular program, but not necessarily in our Spanish GED Spanish GED / ESL class. Okay. And then now we're sort of getting to the nitty gritty here. So this is local flexibility, and this is what this presentation is all about, is this bilingual instruction in Spanish high school equivalency. AEL grantees may provide bilingual instruction within the ESL programs, including instruction to prepare for the Texas Certificate of High School Equivalency and bilingual workforce training. And this bilingual instruction requires that students share a common native language, and that seems obvious, but of course we're doing it in Spanish, but there's other languages you could do this in if you had a group that you could have all of them working on the same language. I imagine Spanish is the main one. It's in the state right now. But if you don't, okay, let's read this. Instructors teaching classes with multiple languages represented are encouraged to refrain from using bilingual methods or do so only with subsets of students who share a common native language. Okay. This one, no local flexibility. And this is important. This is probably the most important regulation here when you're doing a Spanish GED class, is that AEL grantees must not offer Spanish Texas Certificate of High School Equivalency preparation unless the class is integrated with an ESL class and students are assessed as ELLs according to the Texas AEL Assessment Guide. So the important thing here is that you have to assess them with an ESL type test, whether it's CASAS or Best Plus, Best Literacy, and then have ESL integrated into the class. So our initially we had a Spanish GED that was not doing that, and so we had to kind of work it. So we have to put that ESL in there. So here's our community action features in our program in particular. So right now, I didn't know this. I thought we were only serving 8 to 10 classes, but as the director, I had to look in the teams and I realized, oh yeah, we're serving a lot more. We're doing a lot more. So right now we provide 19 classes currently, according to across our service area. We have 2 workplace classes that are with the school district and Hayes School District, with a custodial and a food service class. And then we have 17 other classes that are across our service area. And all are virtual right now. And that's been a bit of a challenge, but we're doing well. And we also, here's some other features, I guess, about our program is that we recruit students from our ESL classes mainly. And if you're interested in doing a class, I think if you have a couple that are interested, and then you start asking your ESL students that are in your other classes, and you can, I bet you can get a nice set of a nice class together just by doing that, because those ESL students oftentimes, although they're taking English, they would love to be able to take the high school equivalency exam and pass it if they knew that they could pass it quickly. Because a lot of times they need jobs, or they want a promotion in their job and they need that GED. So we recruit from our ESL classes, also partnership programs. We recruit from Head Start, Avance, of our school districts, as I mentioned, and some employers. We work with Universal Forest Products, who they're more like a construction type of business, and they send us students. We used to have a class there, in fact, at their location. And then also Spanish, what another feature of our class is that it's grown. We've increased in size more than any other program, from 6 classes in 2017-18 when this first regulation came out, to now we have 19 classes, as I mentioned. Mr. Martinez?
The Far West has 10 different classes across 3 service providers, and many of those classes are split between content areas. For example, 2 days a week they study social studies and reasoning through language arts, and the other 2 days they study math and science with a different teacher. This is really directly based on the skill set of the teachers that we have working for us. And many of them have been credentialed in their country and in K-12, mostly in high school. But here they work directly with the students based on their own strength. We get our enrollment primarily through the ISDs. That's the most important function that our ISDs provide for us. The academic language programs provide parent notifications about our program. Borderplex Workforce Solutions and local employers also hold roundtables and provide us with referrals of students who are looking for a promotion within their company or looking to retool themselves for a different job. And finally, the Combo Spanish GED ESL program has been our largest ESL program since its beginning in 2000. I know there was a point in time when we had to stop doing GED in Spanish because of whatever the regulations were, but we've picked that up back fully. And one of our strongest programs now with our largest enrollment. Doug?
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so oftentimes students, we need to figure out which one should they go into for our English language learners, Spanish HSE or English HSE. So this is kind of a breakdown of, and some of this seems obvious, but if a student, an EL student, is educated in their native country, well, obviously they would be someone that may be interested in taking the Spanish GED class versus someone who has been educated in the United States. Now, some ELLs come in and they want to take the English, GED, because maybe they came in when they're in 10th grade or let's say 5th grade, and they've learned and they've moved up, and so they're interested in taking it in English, but kind of all depends. But what I like to do is, we ask the question like, okay, where do you stand? Are you comfortable with the Spanish, taking the GED in English? Are you comfortable with English? No. Okay, well then let's try the Spanish route. And oftentimes, if they need a job, they're going to want to take it in the most comfortable language that they can. So in other words, most of the time it's in Spanish. You're like, okay, I want to take it in Spanish because I know I'll pass because that's my native tongue, my native language, right? Um, Sometimes if they express that they want to just take it in Spanish, of course, that's what we definitely accommodate them. And if the student fails or lacks confidence, you know, uh, and maybe they failed before and they lack confidence in it and taking it in English, then we obviously push them towards the Spanish GED. But if they're interested in going to college, something like that, then we want to push them towards the English GED. Or if they're advanced academically, or if they say, hey, I want to take this in English, then we do it. And then we have an intermix. Sometimes we have combination where they want to take some subjects in English and some in Spanish. And that's an option. You can do that with the GED. Okay. So here's some benefits. So students enter the program. That this is the great thing about this is that the Spanish GED isn't hard to recruit for. They come in very motivated because of sometimes because of a job they want to get a promotion or because they want to get a new job and they don't have the GED. So they come in and say, hey, I'd like to pass this quickly. So that's a benefit, right? Also, I know a lot of people around the state are looking to get more students, right? Because we obviously have a shortfall in the state. And if you offer this class, this could bring in more students for you because you're offering them an option that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So consider that, so they're easy to recruit. We've noticed in our area that there's DACA now is incentivizing students to go to school and they need that letter from us. So they'll come in and they'll want to take the Spanish GED so that they can fulfill the requirements of the DACA, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrivals Program. And also the other benefit is that we have two options for MSG progress, HSE attainment, that they pass that in Spanish. And then also we have the ESL pre-test, post-test to give them. So you have two options to show MSG gain. So that's always a plus. And we noticed, I looked at this data in my in Teams recently to see, what's the difference? And we found that more people in the Spanish HSE are showing progress, like 36% versus the English GED, which is I think right around 20%. So just by looking at that, there's better options, and there's more of an opportunity to show progress in those areas.
May we interject at this point that one of the greater benefits has just happened this year with the provision of vouchers by the Workforce Commission to AEL. Our Spanish HSE participants, as well as our English HSE participants, have been able to take advantage of not having to pay for the test. And that's really inspired a lot of people to come in and say, hey, I didn't have the opportunity to pay for this before, but now with these vouchers, and I want to bring that up because these vouchers will expire in August. And if you have students who are already capable, I think it's possible that we bring students in, or we have even people coming in from outside who say, I think I'm ready to do this. We give them the GED Ready exam, and once they've passed a score or made the cut score on the GED Ready exam, we can provide for those who are 21 and over, through the courtesy of TEA and TWC, we can provide those vouchers so that they can take those tests without charge. And that's made a great difference in our participation this year.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Mr. Martinez. And it also just saying that you can pay for their exam motivates them to continue in the class and that type of thing. You know, just they're as I mentioned, they're easy to motivate once you're saying we'll pay for your exam, and then that way they'll, once they pass one exam, then they'll really want to keep going. So good point. Yes. Okay. So here are some challenges, and Mr. Martinez would agree with some of these, and maybe he has the same or similar, or maybe has different ones. But challenges to providing the Spanish HSE ESL class. So it's difficult to instruct both Spanish GED and ESL as one class. They're, you know, these students, they have a single focus. They want to pass the GED, and sometimes they're less motivated with a secondary goal of the ESL. And I'm getting reports from teachers that are like, oh, well, you know, they're not going on ESL day. They're only going on GED day. And so that is a real problem. I guess it's how you set it up. And we obviously do try to do our best to explain to the students how important it is to learn, you know, English, because of job. You know, they're going to definitely need the English in the job. And we also have our, which I'll talk about a little bit about, a curriculum and what we use so that they'll be motivated to do the career awareness, the career readiness type of ESL. But anyway, so then also students, there is another challenge that we have, is the students enter the class with on different levels. There's some that are really high level ESL, you know, English, they speak, you know, pretty good English, but they just prefer to take the Spanish GED, take the GED in Spanish. And then you have really, really low students. So then when you start going into the ESL component of the class, there's sort of a discrepancy. And so you almost have to break them out and split them out, you know, into those levels, which is a bit, it's a challenge for my teachers anyway. But another challenge is to find, and I mentioned this earlier, but it's to find the qualified teachers to instruct the class, because you know, it's hard to find someone who is fluent in Spanish, knows all the subjects, you know, has a degree, you know, is good teacher, you know. So, but, you know, we do our best to, as I mentioned, you know, go through the process with the interviewing process and have someone there and have them teach a class, or teach I guess something, a subject with us, with the interviewers. So that's kind of the way we at least try to find the right person. Also, this last one is there's appears not to be a lot of PD trainings for Spanish GED in particular. And so, you know, that, you know, where do we send our Spanish GED teachers for PD? And I know that, you know, there's been talk and work on that front, but that is an issue that we're trying to navigate around.
All right, Doug, there is a question for Doug. It says, Doug, what prompted your program to start Spanish GED in the first place? Just curious.
Well, okay. Well, we started a long time ago, and it was just strictly Spanish GED. But then once that was before, that was back when we were under TEA. So, and we had a teacher that taught both Spanish and English GED, and we sort of split the funds. At that time, it wasn't allowed to do it. But then since TWC took over, we saw the option to open, you know, they sort of expanded opportunities. And so then we were like, okay, let's do some. Plus, well, there's a lot of students that, as I mentioned, they want jobs immediately, and they don't have enough, you know, English to pass the GED, and they're looking for a job that they need their GED, you know. And so these employers don't, you know, it doesn't say Spanish GED or English GED, it just says GED, you know, and it's nice to be able to check that box and to go for those jobs. So it's mainly employment, that's the driver. And also some of the students want to go to college, you know. So good question. Okay. So here, let's talk about the models, and we've done several models, different types of ways to integrate the HSE ESL together, because that's the biggest challenge. So model one has been ESL for 1 day, Spanish HSE 2 days. As I mentioned, I've got reports for this type of model that the students just want to go to Spanish HSC for the 2 days and they try to skip the 1 day. And so we've developed some strategies on how to manage that, which are in these other two models. So the next model is, integrate a portion of ESL into each day. So you don't tell the students like, hey, we're going to do ESL, these 2 days, and then we're doing Spanish HSE within this class, but we're also going to do ESL, and you pick like 1 hour a day or something like that, and teach them vocabulary or related to the subject areas in the GED, or which we've learned over time that it's best to teach them workplace type of curriculum. We use the ICA, integrating career awareness, into the ESOL classroom curriculum, which I'll talk about in a second, I believe. So, so model 3 is kind of where we're moving towards more and more. We have a couple of programs that are already implementing this, but where we do, it's synchronous and asynchronous. So Spanish HSC is synchronous. We have a virtual class and on Zoom, and they do 2 days a week Spanish HSC in the various subjects, right? And then the other they also have the ESL, but they go asynchronous, meaning that they're on Burlington English, and they do that at their leisure whenever, but they need at least 1 to 2 hours a week, right? So the ESL becomes using our distance learning courseware, and the other, the Spanish HSC is, using our just the teacher, with Paxton, in the classroom. And that's working great. I think that's where we're going to be moving towards soon. All of our classes are going to go that way. And then the last one, number 4, integrate ESL into subject-based academies. Like I said, sometimes we have students that take some subjects in English, some in Spanish. And so we have, when we do our, various like Science Academy, we teach in Spanish. And then we also have a component in English. And I think I have a couple of teachers that are doing that currently. And I think this is Mr. Martinez's slide.
We work in similar fashions, and I think that's interesting because Mr. Mudd and I have never spoken about this, but when we started putting this together, we have very similar classes. Mm-hmm. In our particular program, we do Spanish HSE for 2 days, and we do ESL for 2 days. And we're going to talk about the ESL for 2 days and how to keep them motivated and keep them attending those. In one of the programs, our provider integrates a portion of ESL into each day. So they put 1 hour of one content and 3 hours of the other. And that often switches off depending on where they are in terms of progress and in terms of their GED ready scores. In another program, because of budgetary limitations, they only do Spanish HSE for 2 days and then provide for them distance learning contacts for 3 to 5 hours a week and keep them interested and keep them motivated that way. We also have found it's much easier for the teacher to do one instructor for math and science and one instructor doing reading and social studies, and our I'm going to lose her term. Ms. Puga, who is our PD coordinator and our instructional specialist, really has the teachers' professional development focusing on reading and math. Once they get the reading and math portion down, the reading helps with the social studies and the math helps with the science. So we embed those other contents, but find out that when reading and math are their strengths. And we'll talk a little bit about what happens on the off times when we get to the next couple of slides. But I was really impressed with the fact that our programs are incredibly similar across this distance and not having had this conversation before. Doug?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I can't believe it's amazing that, and then similar curriculum too. So for curriculum for community action, we primarily do, for the Spanish HSE portion, we use Steckbond using those Spanish GED books. We use Paxton focused Spanish GED courseware. I don't know if y'all are using that, but I get reports back from teachers that they love this courseware. and it's relatively new. And then another courseware that we're want to use. I don't know if it's out yet, though. Maybe y'all know more than me, but I'm hearing the Spanish GED Academy is coming soon. I heard it was going to be coming this summer. So we're using the Spanish GED Academy. We definitely will use that next time. Whenever it open, whenever the class, whenever the courseware comes out. So for the ESL curriculum, as I mentioned, we use the Integrated College and Career Awareness, ICA curriculum, and then we use Burlington English, as I mentioned before. Okay, Ms. Martinez?
Currently, classes are conducted through Zoom, starting July 12th. All of our classes will return face-to-face in our program. Mr. Mudd expressed that sometimes there are very disparate levels of literacy or English language ability. Zoom has allowed us to provide breakout rooms for literacy to high beginning in one space and time and intermediate to advanced in another, so that our teacher has been able to split that time. For example, when she works in a class that's 8:30 to noon, she does 8:30 to 9:45 with the lower group and has them in breakout rooms, while the intermediate to advanced group is working on their distance learning, and then moves over to the intermediate to advanced group in the second portion from 9:45 until noon. The interesting piece that we have found is that the ESL component is taught in many cases by 3 different teachers. We have them in one of our chosen academies. In the lower literacy levels, we have them moving to a class called ESL for Life Skills. And in the medium to intermediate classes, high beginning to intermediate classes, depending on what their goals are, we have an academy that says ESL to Work, and that really does contextualize workforce preparation activities and contextualize vocabulary for the task that they've chosen as their goal in their ITech plan. And for the ESL to College program, those are our advanced to exit level students, and they really are working on changing that whole context of Spanish language acquisition to English language use in their next career. And so those pieces have been very helpful, because each of our teachers in those academies brings a different strength and a different context to what we do. The ESL component is very, very important, but at this point, I'd like to go back to the GED instruction and give you a few minutes of what happens with the GED teacher and their preparation and how they manage their classes. Doug, can you switch to the video, please?
Yes. Let's see if I get this right.
And while Doug does the video, I want to let you know that our classes do manage to go on a, we call it a managed enrollment period, where we have introduction and orientation every 2 weeks. And so we bring students into a class called Digital Literacy that helps them through the computer portion and the access of Zoom classes before they even enter the class. But let me not take that time. Let's move to the teacher and listen to what she has to say.
Hello, my name is Neira Coello. I'm a Mexican born in Ciudad Juárez, where I complete my career of computer system engineer, graduating from Instituto Tecnológico de Ciudad Juárez. I was an ESL student and YCLC, and now I work there. I teach Spanish HSC at YCLC. Most of my students are adults. I am currently teaching remotely. The greatest challenge in all these months has been technology. For my students, it's been complicated, frustrating, and at the same time challenging to use digital platform as a teaching method. Zoom, email, Classroom, Paxen, Common Kami, send work, upload, forward, write in the chat. For some of my students, these words had no meaning, but now they have gradually been dominated them. The fear of technology has been a biggest challenge so far. I teach 2 times a week for each group. Therefore, I assign one day to see math and the other day I alternative between the other two subjects. I basically focus on those skills we can develop which can help them in the 3 subjects. My classes are developed in multi-level environment. To determine these levels, the first day of my classes, my students answer a math exam and a format of strengths and weaknesses. Through this format, I realized their math knowledge and areas in which they need more support. From there, I assign them to the appropriate class. For math classes that I the subject that represents the most difficult, I prepare each topic in a little theory. I make a presentation like this with the fundamental concept. One explained, we can move to practice. I do exercise, then we practice together, and they work by themselves. This. In independent practice, I do in different way. Based on repetition of the exercise, many repetition until the skill is mastered. For this exercise, I support myself on websites which have a specific worksheet. Then we practice with resonate exercise. For this, I support myself on Paxen, preliminary preparation books, and GED books. For reading, and I support on Common Lead, especially in the units which cover lessons from same subject, which allow us to compare, contrast, analyze, and do inference and uh, identify evidence. Answer question related to the topic. This link is a graphic organizer to create a central idea of the analysis. The tool and lesson provided at Paxen is also a great support, especially the part they can practice in writing. The instructional practice that helps me in the classroom is when they understand that learning is going to be by levels and stop thinking if the classmate is younger, smarter, etc. Cannot compare. If they practice and I can see their work, I can realize where they are failing. The exams of each topic also help them to study well practice. Now see different way to analyze a problem, boundary and picture. Each person can analyze a problem differently, and I like that they share their methods of analyzing and solve problems. Graphic organizer is a valuable tool we can apply in different areas. Thank you.
That was great. I'm so impressed by just how much she's covering in that. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Doug, I think we have about 2 minutes. Let me try to wrap up my portion. And I just want to tell people that I asked Ms. Coelho if she would do this on the spur of the moment with no practice. She was in our internationally trained professionals class. I am just so incredibly proud that I have the ability here to hire people who are smarter than I am. It is an amazing, amazing accomplishment to have somebody just come here and think they're going to learn English and then finally have them working here as one of our accredited staff members. So I just want to focus back before we start It is Spanish HSE, but it is also ESL. And if you focus the ESL on what their goals are and what their ITech plan is and what your career navigator is doing, it all works seamlessly together. Doug, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for having a similar program to what we have been doing in both communities.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I know we got 2 minutes. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes,
Okay.
actually, Doug, there was a question earlier, and everyone, this is Ana Maria Molinari, and I became the host since Olga had to roll off. So there was a question back earlier, and I just wanted to see if we could maybe reinforce and summarize. Are your classes on a rolling admission basis? If so, how are you managing teaching of ESL, GED for students with varying admission periods? And I thought we could spend a minute or two answering that again.
So yes, well, we have, if the class drops off, if we got a full class, we're talking about 19 classes, so we're all over the place, have a variety of models, so it's a little bit and then also we're have been in the pandemic, and so everything's virtual. But typically, if you're talking about do we have rolling cohorts? Yes. Especially if there's a large group that have dropped and the class wasn't full. So that's the way we do it, community action. If the class is not full, then we will have continual registrations until the class is full, and then at some point we cut it off, right? So you're wondering, I guess the question is about if the students, do we have we continue on, and how do we manage the English, the ESL portion of that? And from what I understand from my teachers is that it depends on which model it is, of course, but they just continue on with the rest of the class. They just enter in at a certain level and continue on. And split up for the ESL portion. I guess it depends if that's what makes that distance learning ESL and the Spanish HSC manageable, doing it that model, because the students are at their own pace, kind of with the Burlington English courseware as a part of that class, right? So did I answer that question? Mr. Martinez, you want to give that a shot?
I started a little bit, but we have a 21st century skills class, which is basically computer basics to help them to link to Zoom and to Paxson and to Voxy and to all of the distance learning and the integrated components joining the class. But each of our teachers, especially in the HSE portion, then I'll go to ESL, the HSE portion, they teach them in 4 to 6 week units, so that as people come in, they catch the end of a unit and then they start on another unit based on the content. So they work on math for a certain period of time, and then they go back and work on science for a period of time. The same with the reasoning and the social studies portion. So the classes themselves function on the same rotating basis. In the ESL class, that's a little bit more difficult. And what that does is that gives the teacher the opportunity to provide introductory, I would call them icebreakers or team builders, so that each person who comes into the class on a rotating basis is integrated into the class so that they become a part of it. And I think our HSE teacher said it the best. She said, we're all working on the same thing. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are or what education you've had. We're all starting from the same basis here. I think that's the greatest strength of our staff. And I can't brag enough about our staff. That's who runs our program, not the director or the PD coordinator.
So at this time, I want to thank, first of all, Doug Mudd from Community Action for being a presenter today, as well as Mr. Martinez from the Far West Adult Education Consortium in Ysleta Community Learning Center. Very good information today. We appreciate spending the time with the entire state. Yes, it was a fabulous presentation. I agree, Liz. And so thank you everybody for joining us.